It is TAW Live. It's Neil Atkinson with Rob Gutmann, with Mike Bankole, and with Sean Rogers to go through, well, all the bits and pieces that matter through the week from Liverpool Football Club. There's midfield links piling up. There is new stuff today around Kedron Turam, pulled together by Big Mick Delaney in there as well, and other names are bouncing around the place. I want to have a chat about those links, about Liverpool's midfield history and how we perceive it versus the actual reality. And coming up as well, we will be talking about everything that comes out of the manager's press conference. His views are on counter press and how important it is for him at the minute. Nottingham Forest at the weekend, the manager getting through 5 games in 2 weeks and talking about that as well, and what we think the teams will be at the weekend and what we expect from Liverpool. Also coming up, if you listen to this as a podcast, I spoke to Emma Leaper from Asylum Link about an event that's happening on Ullet Road on Friday the 28th, and Peter Kenny-Jones as well about his book Crossing the Park, and he's also got an event on Friday the 28th. It's a big Friday in Liverpool. Who would have known? Who would have guessed? But we'll start off with the midfield links. They are piling up. Mount and Gravenberch continue apace. Rob, from the weekend, people linking Liverpool to them at every opportunity. First and foremost, before we get into the new one, how are you feeling about Mount and Gravenberch?
They're like the sons I've never had. I feel their family already. You know, we've joked. No, I don't know if that's the word. We've talked about them both quite a lot in the last week or so. I feel, without wanting to tempt fate, the links to these two have reached a sufficient crescendo for me to say that I'd be bordering on surprised if they're not lining up for Liverpool in pre-season.
Wow, that's a big shout coming from you.
It is, because I don't like to. It's not done till it's done. I'm not one of those who goes, I'm not interested till I see them in a red shirt, or I won't believe it till I see them doing the lean at where is it, at the AXA. But I feel the certain we're experienced transfer watchers now. God knows it, and I just feel there's momentum to this. You almost need a cocktail of rumours to sort of get you to a certain point. And with Gravenberch, we've got them all. We've got the serious journalists, we've got the online spoofers, and we've got Jose Enrique.
It's the Dream Three, I believe.
Yeah, it is the Holy Trinity. And I just like, just to refresh people, Jose went on record on his own podcast as saying, and this is at least a month, maybe 8 weeks ago, going, oh, by the way, I know a secret. Gravenberch is nailed on for Liverpool, and I know this because we've got the same agent, who's Rafaela Pimenta, I think that's her name.
I'll trust you.
Raiola Minola, the late Raiola Minola's successor, and so they're the same agent. And he was unequivocal about it. It's done. I thought, yeah, that's so mad. That's probably true. And then, lo and behold, weeks later, the very, very unimpeachable Jonathan Northcroft,
The sage Jonathan Northcroft, someone described him as.
the sane sage, great guy that is Jonathan Northcroft, said, yeah, Liverpool are very interested, and there's even reports that we've even been to talk to his people this week. So Bayern have obviously come out and said, no, not for sale, but it's not a very convincing not for sale.
Not a very convincing not for sale. Mike, Mount and Gravenberch, before we get into Kepa and Thuram, what are your feelings on those two, both as footballers themselves in and of themselves, but also the links that have happened this week from a Liverpool point of view?
I think they're both interesting players in that they sound like a Jurgen Klopp redemption story. So both of them are players who aren't at their highest in terms of their stock, in terms of their form, but they're players that you can see would fit us and would do a good job for us. I think Mount is one that I'm really keen on because I think he's almost like a new Lallana. He's a sort of player that's got really good tactical IQ. He's played a number of roles for Chelsea, and crucially, he's played a number of roles for Chelsea to a high level. He's one of those players that fits in and can do it. He does a really good job across the pitch for Chelsea, and I think Jurgen Klopp would appreciate that. And I'm sure we're going to go into our midfield a bit later on, but he's someone you can plug in. Sometimes you can plug him onto the right-hand side and to the left-hand side and trust to do a really, really good job. And I think for us, we do want to sign players who are tactically astute and who can press really, really well. I mean, the manager literally says today, counter pressing is a ticket to get into his team. And I think Mason Mount does that really, really well. On Gravenberch, I think he's also an exciting signing. And we have to remember how he was being spoken about last summer. Last summer, he was being spoken about as arguably the most exciting young midfielder on the market. He was last summer's Jude Bellingham in many ways. He was someone that lots of clubs were looking at, and he's got a unique skill set, and he can carry the ball really, really well. He's got really good feet. He's a powerful runner. He reminds me a bit actually of the lad that used to play for Arsenal, Abu Diaby, in the way he plays. When I watch the clips online on YouTube, it reminds me a lot of him. And I think we are looking to sign a midfielder who can carry the ball. So we're linked to Matheus Nunes, who I wasn't too keen on. The more I watched him, the less convinced I was by him. Kepa and Thuram, who we're going to talk about, I'm sure, he carries the ball really, really well. and Gravenberch does that too. So we are looking for that skill set. And I think of the midfielders we've been linked to that carry the ball, he's the most gifted. Now, I guess the question mark for us and for him is, can he adapt to a club like Liverpool? Does he have the temperament to adapt to a club like Liverpool? I think those are the questions we're asking for him in his time at Bayern Munich. But I actually think for the fee that it's rumoured to cost £25 million for a player of his talent level, I think it's a low risk signing for us, and I think it's a signing that I would be really excited about.
Really excited there, Mike, on both of them. Sean, how do you feel about both of them? And what do you think it suggests tactically? I agree with Mike's sort of diagnosis there around people who can carry the ball and look after the ball through the middle phase of the pitch. I think that's one of the things that Liverpool will be looking for. The counter-pressing thing, the manager couldn't have been any clearer today. It is a ticket to play in this Liverpool team. You have to be able to do it. These two are interesting links, and as I say, I'm not entirely literally where Rob is, that you feel as though they're both very, very close to being done. But I'm not that far away. You can, it feels like it all feels very sensible to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Liverpool are probably in a situation which is a bit more where they were at 2016, 2017, where rather than it be there's one standout player and it's him or no one, and we're willing to wait an extra window if it takes to get them in. I think this is very much like some of the award-winning gutter shows that Rob hosts, sometimes from the Zurich HQ, where they've done loads of shows where it would be, there's 3 or 4 names in the hat, and you get the impression that internally at Liverpool there's not a lot separating them, that it might come down to who can get the deal done at the cheapest way or the best way or
the quickest way, I suspect, as well, Sean.
Well, yeah, exactly, especially this summer. So I suspect there's a bit of that Liverpool have got a shortlist where there's not an awful lot between them. In terms of Mount, I still wonder whether there's a bit of, especially with Lampard being in there, Chelsea wanting to keep him, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if he ends up there, although there's a million reasons to think that's not what's going to happen. Thuram and Gravenberch are very similar types. You could argue that both of them would fill the Wijnaldum Thiago role, and by that I mean like a double 6 on the left-hand side. If there's any progressive passing or progressive carry junkies out there, they're going to love the two of them, because whilst they would want them to progress from where they're already at, that's kind of where they've made their name in terms of being very physical, mobile midfielders that are somewhat press resistant and can actually get you vertical. I think Thuram's numbers are very, very similar to Fabinho. And not some of the versions we've seen of Fabinho this year, I may add, are very similar to some of Fabinho's numbers. So I'd imagine that those two are aligned in that kind of a role. Mount, yeah, I agree. He maybe looks more like almost like your Manchester City type signing, where in this new system, I say new system, but whatever, in the system Liverpool are using, which is a bit Man City-esque at the moment, where you can argue there's 2 10s playing off a striker in a sort of 3-2-2-3 system. Man City have regularly used Bernardo Silva in them roles, Kevin De Bruyne in them roles, Gundogan, Phil Foden, etc. Mount is someone that could occupy both of them roles. If you wanted to play more standard 3-man midfield, you could see him doing that and playing as part of an 8. So a bit like Lallana, you can see him being very versatile, and you get the vibe from the people in football that would know that he passes Klopp's, I won't swear on this show, but passes Klopp's personality test for being a decent enough human being. So I can completely see where that would fit in. And I think what Liverpool are looking for in there is that mixed bag. I think what Liverpool are probably looking for is multifunctional midfield players. And when you see a lot of the ones that are linked, you could see them fitting in more than one particular role. It's not that they're looking for a number 6 and that's all he can do, or he's a number 10 and it's all he can do.
I think as part of that, Thuram, unbelievable numbers of progressive carries, 98th percentile according to FB Ref, which is, really high comparison to the sort of Europe's top 5 leagues, midfielders who play across them in there. Mike, you mentioned Gravenberch there as well as being able to look after it. Sean's point around the multifunctionality, I think, is important. I think that there's something else there as well, which is I do think that in our minds we look back on Liverpool history and feel as though it was always 3 of Fabinho, Henderson, Milner and Wijnaldum, but that just wasn't true. Shaqiri gets an unbelievable number of games in the first half of the 18-19 season. often it becomes 3 from that 4 that I've mentioned towards the end of campaigns, or with Keita dropped in and Thiago dropped in last season, it becomes 3 most of the time, starting 3 from, for instance, Fabinho, Henderson, Keita and Thiago. But there is the extended periods where Liverpool don't just play the way in which I think we remember it and we imagine it. And the multifunctionality that I think Sean's talking about, you can see why it might be what the manager wants, especially whilst Liverpool is still working out the new way of playing.
Absolutely. And I think, the manager often uses a wide pool of midfielders. And then when we get to the run in of a season, he lands on 3 or 4 he really, really wants to kind of run home almost and get him over the line in the season. And I think that'll be the case next season, hopefully. Hopefully we're in a position where this time next year, we're on the tour live thinking about a Champions League quarter final and reflecting on, what's going to happen next. So I do think that the midfielders we're signing, also another one we've been linked to who's of the same mold in terms of being able to play different positions and different roles, is Alex McAllister. So it's definitely something we're looking at. We're trying to look at multifunctional midfielders. And I think that's something City have done quite well in their recruitment. They've signed some players in midfield areas, Gundogan, who can cover both sides, can sometimes play as a 6 if they really need him to. They've got midfielders who they can just kind of slot into different roles and can play different systems and shapes. And I think for the manager, he's aware that if he was to sign a Mason Mount or a Gravenberch or a Thuram, it opens up different, not even just in terms of formations, but different opportunities in terms of how we can use other players in the squad. So I think it's really, really interesting that we are being linked to all these kind of really multifunctional midfielders. And I think it's a sign of what we want to do moving forward.
I think that we can get hung up, on what happened in the past and forget that there was much more variance. I think this idea that Liverpool always played the same way, Rob, it's just inaccurate, to be honest with you, that there wasn't variance. There was what Liverpool would do in certain big games that I think had a bit of commonality about it. But apart from that, I always look back and I think you can see that Liverpool do have quite significant sort of variance between 2018 and 2017, even all the way through to 2020, and then even last season as well. Liverpool are beginning to, for instance, advance that right-hand side of player quite markedly more up the pitch. It isn't as simple as what's happened with Trent Alexander-Arnold in the last couple of games. That said, what has happened with Trent Alexander-Arnold in the last couple of games has changed the role of 6 or 7 players on the pitch in terms of what they're asked to do and where. So, it does feel as though that flexibility will matter.
Yeah, I think why memory, maybe community memory is distorted on how we've lined up during the Klopp era. And I think I'm guilty of it as well, of thinking it's the A midfielders, Fabinho, Henderson, Wijnaldum, is because that sort of type of midfield was how he tended to set up, I think, and I don't think my memory's deceiving me that much in this, against the top 6 away in Champions League semi-finals, given fitness and availability. That would be his more cautious, defensive approach, quite frankly. But you always did get a sense with Klopp that he was looking for, just for another way to
Chamberlain starts against Roma, Chamberlain starts against Man City, and so on and so forth.
Well, I think there's an evolution. If you he starts off in his first 2 seasons, his first season and a half, Lallana is the attacking number 8, and Wijnaldum and Henderson and Milner and Emre Can are sharing the other 2 positions quite a lot. When Lallana fades from view because of his recurrent injuries, Chamberlain breaks into the side about December of 17 and really nails down a place and becomes an absolute main. And I think we got to a point by the time Chamberlain sort of hits his high watermark and scores in the quarter-final of the Champions League against City, that Henderson and Wijnaldum and Chamberlain is very much the first pick of the midfield. And then Chamberlain fades from view, and he doesn't. And I think after that point, we don't actually replace Chamberlain. We're waiting for him to come back, and rightly so. And also, we're still waiting for Coutinho to be replaced. There was also a point early on where Coutinho was going to drop back in and take that role, and Fekir was possibly going to be, for a moment, going to be signed. I do think there's the common theme for Klopp's the midfields he's put together have been the defensive one in the big games. He needs, defensive is the wrong word. He needed that bit more security.
Yes, secure is a better word than defensive.
And I think he hasn't had enough secure options this season because he's had Milner at the age he is, and Fabinho and Henderson getting older and inconsistency in Fabinho's sake. Thiago's a strange one, as I think he was sort of meant to bridge the gap and be both part of the attacking games where we could cut loose a bit more, but also be part of the secure games. And at times that's been the case, but other times it hasn't. I think he hasn't had the certainty in his midfield over the last. And I do think it goes back to last season because it was more a sort of the will that got us over the line a lot of the time last season. So it has been a burgeoning problem.
With it, Sean, where he ends up, as I say, it doesn't need to be massive departures, and I think it both is and isn't now. As it's the most interesting thing about the tweaking of Trent Alexander-Arnold's role for me has been that this time, unlike I think in previous attempts at this, it's had a much grander ramifications elsewhere on the pitch. I think there was times last season where he was doing something like this for periods here and there, and the managers made reference to that in his press conferences. But I don't think it was, for instance, influencing what was happening at left back, and then I don't think it was influencing what was happening to the two lads who we would mark down as eights anywhere near as much. And that for me is where, for instance, Mount becomes really, really interesting, because I think if Liverpool are going to commit, and I thought this last summer as well to an extent, if Liverpool are committing to at least one of the two eights playing really high, then Liverpool do need more eights who can play really high than the ones that they've currently got at their disposal. And I do feel as though, we will see Mount. I'm confident that Liverpool feel, he's been linked to Arsenal today, but I'm confident Liverpool feel they can get something done with Mount, and I think Liverpool do like him a great deal. And I think that this is part of the reason why, because I think no matter what we're doing, whoever plays that right-hand side at 8 role does need to be able to interchange with the front line in a way that I think has maybe began to sort of overtake Henderson.
Yes, I completely agree. This Liverpool side, as we've referenced before, going, the first title challenge, if you like, is more of a, without making it all about numbers, but they built up in like a 2-3-5. And that's where people thought we had a bit of that Brexity midfield, which isn't true, because there's that stat about the Champions League lineup.
Yeah,
pretty in the final of 2019, basically never appearing together again. So
I never appeared together before either.
Yeah, so we did often have that more attacking, creative midfielder, be it Shaqiri, be it Lallana, be it Oxlade-Chamberlain, or even be it Milner, given a bit more free rein than you'd think with Milner being selected within that 3-man midfield. But Trent and Robertson were very much attacking fullbacks within that. So the 5 attacking, as we know, were the front 3, and then Trent and Robertson. And then Liverpool moved to that 2-3-5, where they do invert Trent in, and through the second half of last year, 21-22, Trent is regularly moving from right back into that 3rd man midfield role on the right-hand side. And Liverpool are structurally 2-3-5. And people have seen what Harvey Elliott's done this year. And because things haven't gone well, they've it's the Harvey Elliott role as if he's going on a frolic of his own. Or they're looking at the manager changing things and going, why has he done this? Well, we were doing that when we were going for the quadruple. Like it or not, that's what Liverpool did. The pressure was on the 2 centre-backs to deal with everything, on Alisson to sweep up, and then normally Thiago and Fabinho alongside Trent in that role. They had to shut things down, and we had to attack in a certain structure to get Jurgen's counter-pressing in. The issue that you've seen Man City, I think, get together on much quicker than anyone else, followed by Arsenal, and then finally by us. And, I've been screaming about this for a while, that loads of clubs have started dropping the centre forward, especially against the top teams, and doing a bit of cheating with faster, pacier wingers. And it's not a coincidence that Liverpool have been damaged all season long by fast attacking, pacey threats who are getting far too many touches on the ball, and Alisson's having far too much to do. And the reason for that is that the 2-3-5 build-up that Liverpool had structurally just hasn't been right this season. As we've said, it's sometimes been a 2-2-6. It's been messy at times. The injuries haven't helped with that. But Man City, even last season, went, no, we need to start building with a 3. And not just any old 3 centre-halves. Even though on a line-up, it might be a back 4 with a left back or a right back, or even sometimes 4 centre-backs being picked in that side. And it's because we want to build with a robust 3. And lo and behold, the 2 top teams in the country both build with a 3-man line in possession. We stuck with the 2-man line when you've got no Canate, Virgil struggling, and wonder why that's a recipe for disaster. And we wait until April to start looking at alternative solutions, which is crackers. So I hope that this is something that Liverpool stick with, not because Man City do it and Arsenal do it. It's because I think the reason they've done it applies to us too. And that is that we've got to stop teams being able to get out of their half, with attacking pacey threats down the side of our centre-backs. And we can't have a situation where if Konaté's not fit, we're knackered. And I don't think we're in as grave a situation as that anyway. And what that feeds into is you needing players like Mount and more of them to play in them roles. And that is where I think you would see Harvey Elliott developing his career, because if he was I'm not saying he's good enough for Manchester City, there's a question mark about it. I'm a big fan of Elliott. There's a question mark about whether he will score enough goals, do enough assists, whether he'd be a good enough elite player to damage teams in the final third. But if he was at Man City, he'd be being groomed for one of them two roles, the De Bruyne or Gundogan role behind their three-man attack. And you can even see against Arsenal, more so than Leeds, that when you do get it right, you can understand why you can pen teams in and make it very hard for them to get out.
Okay, then. Lots of this to come. If you want to subscribe to the Anfield Wrap and hear that sort of stuff on the review, or for that matter, this sort of transfer stuff on the Gutter, our show that will be running 3 times a week. 3 times a week, you're doing it over the summer?
Yeah.
Yep, there we are. As Liverpool's links begin to push itself along, it's why it wins the awards. It's longevity as much as actual quality, as far as I'm concerned. Is that fair?
Length and girth, Neil.
Thank you very much indeed, Roberto. Excellent to see. It is TAW Live. It is a pleasure, as ever, to be with you on a Friday evening. However, you're listening to this before Liverpool play Nottingham Forest. If you are listening to this, it is a podcast, and in a minute or two, you're going to hear me speak to Emma Leaper from Asylum Link about an event at Ullet Road Unitarian Church on Friday the 28th, and the other work that Asylum Link does, and also Peter Kenny-Jones on his book Crossing the Park, an event he's got going as well along with that book. So first and foremost, you're going to hear me speaking to Emma, and then after that you'll hear me speaking to Peter. But if you've chosen neither of those things, we are back as TAW Live. I've got Mike, I've got Sean, I've got Rob, and we wrote down 2144. Do check your golden goal scorecard on that one for this week's TAW Live. Hopefully you've won a raffle of meat, and you're going to enjoy it very, very much indeed. Before then, though, we're going to talk about what he says in the press conference, and Sean, he talked about, Mike quoted it before, I liked it, counter-pressing is the ticket to get into this team. However he's structuring Liverpool, this manager, whatever it is that he is doing, and there was a couple of little bits and pieces in there that I thought was quite interesting. Someone in the comments in the first part talked about Thiago and Trent as double sixes against weaker teams. We might see that, I think, against Nottingham Forest. He might choose to rest Fabinho, start Thiago at 6, and have Trent coming in from right back to support him. That wouldn't surprise me. But whatever it is he does, Sean, counter-pressing is just going to be everything for him. There's no getting away from it. That's the way in which he's going to look at football.
Yes, I mean, very quickly on the Thiago point, I think hypothetically, I'd agree with that. But when Liverpool were moving Robertson up the pitch against Leeds, it was in those moments that Liverpool looked a bit exposed, because what you're actually doing is you're transitioning from that nice solid 3 at the back with 2 in front to a 2 and a 2. And you saw the other night, even against someone like Leeds, Fabinho had to do a lot of backtracking and filling in a defence. And I thought he was, even though he wasn't involved, I thought his organising and his covering in that role was very good. So if you're going to continue with Robertson bombing on against, you can probably get away with it against the weaker opposition, but I wouldn't feel comfortable with them 2 6s. If you're going to have, if it wasn't Andy Robertson, it was Nathan Ake, then yeah, I think at that point you can maybe do, and that might be what something Liverpool look for. In terms of the counter pressures, it's interesting that came up in the press conference. Since Cody Gakpo came in, I've always thought that it would be the more central role than the left-hand side he'd been bought for, but I was amazed by how active and how busy he seemed to get. And in the numbers, his pressing and counter-pressing numbers are absolutely through the roof. But I had a quick look at it today because I thought, well, is he trying to sort of hint here that Jota and Gakpo in particular are me pressing monsters, and the reason other people aren't in the team is because they're not? But I'm not sure if Gakpo's that good a presser. On pressures and counter pressures, he's 98th percentile, but on actually doing it successfully, he's 55 and 29. So there's room for him. Like that would say to me, his intentions are great, but whether it's the structure around that or when and where to go, not too sure. Bobby's numbers are off the charts. I mean, they're just all in the 90s. You know, it shows even at the age and stage that he is at that. You know, that's insane. People like Harvey Elliott as well are really good. Diaz, again, that surprised me a little bit. He's like 90 odd percentile for pressures and counter pressures, but in terms of regains, he's poor. And then when you work down the list, Jota is extremely good across all metrics. And then you come to Salah, and that's surprising. Salah's 49 percentile on pressures, 25 on pressure regains, 64 on counter pressures. And then you come to Núñez, and he's 88th percentile on actually getting, the success rate and so forth. It's just that his numbers are low on pressures and attempted counter pressures. So
what are you saying, Sean? His regains, his success rate is high, but he doesn't try it often enough, or the opposite?
Yeah. So if I was Núñez sat in there now, I would be like, yeah, Cody Gakpo and Luis Diaz might have bigger numbers, but they're headless chickens. My view would be, I'm picking where and when to go. And if you like, I'll probably blag it and say I'm blocking lanes and doing whatever. So if you want me to do more headless chicken running, that's sound. But what I'm trying to do is, and also structure comes into a lot. Núñez has been used in a lot of different roles here. So yes, counter pressing is definitely the way he wants to get in, and you get the feeling, and I think there'll be flexibility with this, but you get the feeling that he's said in his press conferences about top 4. The season doesn't end. There's another season to play, and I think he's seeing this as a continuation in terms of, I want us to finish the season strong with a tactical setup where everyone knows what they're doing, so that we can then recruit for the various tactical setups we have and move from there. So on that basis with the front three, I think he's setting his stall out and saying, because he's famed, isn't he, that if you want to get in the team and you ask why you're not in it, you're getting the door slammed in your face. You've basically got to say, what do I need to do to get in the team? And then as long as you do it, he'll get you back in the team somehow. So I think he's sending a message out more likely to Núñez than anyone else, that if you want to get in this team, you've got to be a counter-pressing and pressing monster.
I think we've seen Curtis Jones evolve. I mean, it's been a while since we've seen him regularly in the side, but in these 3 games, I've been impressed by him. But particularly the other night, I was stunned by how often he was regaining the ball for us. I think I counted 5 or 6 times in the first half. I don't know what his numbers look like on the stats, but the eye test.
The difficulty at the minute is just that he hasn't played enough minutes for him to fall in. Because a lot of them have a minimum of 600 minutes, and that's fair. To sort of see what a player's doing game in, game out, and all of that sort of stuff. So, and there is that sort of disparity. The other thing about pressure regains or counter pressure regains is it's 5 seconds. It's not that you have to regain it; it's the team gets it back within 5 seconds of the pressure or counter pressure. So Gakpo might be listening to Sean right now, saying, "Sean, I'm doing my bit right. It's that these aren't following up."
Valid. When
I think that's
Vieira, when Wenger said Vieira wasn't running enough, I'd be like, I'm reading the game better, mate.
Yeah, but I think that's a really interesting thing and a really interesting part of this. And to bring Mike in, for me, this is about it working as a collective, and I think that's the key thing that the manager wants. The whole thing only works if you genuinely do the business as a collective. And he's got to work out what his best collective is, game by game. And he's got 5 games in a compressed period of time here, and I think we're going to see. I think part of what he is sort of saying is, listen, if you all do this thing that I want you to do and you all do it right, we'll be absolutely fine. And I think his messages is more about, I need you all to do it and all to understand it and all to be all in on it for it to work. And I do wonder whether or not, if the managers felt over the course of the season that they haven't all been all in enough at the same time, often enough, whatever area of the pitch we're talking about or whatever individuals, Mike.
I think it's about reaffirming our identity, a lot of this, and rediscovering who we are. I think we've spoken a lot about maybe this side lacking a clear identity and pressing something that's you would associate with a Jurgen Klopp team. And I think the managers, he's moaned a lot about our pressing at times, and whenever it's been good, he's made sure he's emphasized it. He said, "Look, our pressing was really good today." So I think he wants to reaffirm our identity and remind the players that they need to buy into that. And I think really the title challenge or the kind of building for next season starts now. So it's about the institutional muscle memory of pressing again and counter-pressing and that controlled aggression when it comes to counter-pressing and being smart as a collective. But then it's also about the institutional muscle memory of winning games and counter-pressing being fundamental to us winning games.
Getting the reward, Mike. I think it's about getting the reward. Yeah.
Exactly. So all of those things come together, and I think it was a message to Núñez, and I think he knows the type of character Núñez is. Núñez is the sort of character to be like, "Hey, I'll show you. And I think he genuinely will try and work on his game and will try and improve outside of his game and show more intensity in terms of actually the desire to press in the same way that Gakpo and Diaz do. So I think it's really about reaffirming identity, because I think so many times this season we haven't known what to expect from this team. I don't think the managers at times know what to expect from this team. So I think it's important that we do have that clear sense of identity between now and May.
A good way to reassert it is, as Mike says, Rob, just simply winning games. Forest are the poorest, probably the poorest away side in the country over the course of this season. They've been in slightly better nick in terms of the underlying numbers, but the flip side of that is that they haven't played a top side since Spurs, other than Spurs, since New Year's Day. And I don't know if you've heard on the streets, but Spurs are absolutely terrible at football. I mean, it's what everyone's talking about, knocking around the pier heads. You know, everyone's stopping you and saying, "Have you seen Tottenham? Have you never seen anything look as sad as Tottenham?" The Tottenham chat is misery everywhere across the city of Liverpool. They did ship 11 to Arsenal and City, but they might be in better nick than they were. That was the first half of the season. But in truth, whilst they'll be looking to find bits of intensity and pin Liverpool back here and there and set pieces and long balls and so on and so forth, in truth, this is just a game Liverpool should be winning. You know, there's no, even the poor form Liverpool of this season, you know, they've really got to be getting a result in this one.
Yeah, they do. I mean, given the task that lies ahead, which is to the Big Eight, to now...
The Big Eight, it was the Big Nine, but one's done.
Normally, I'd say, I've lost count of how many times I said this season, just win Liverpool, I don't care how you do it. I'm not saying we have to put on a show, but I think we need to win comfortably. It can't be something that leaves more questions than answers.
It's got to build confidence, I think.
Yeah, well, that's the key, hasn't it? It's got to sort of, in a sense, give us the chance of going 1-0 up in the next game, which is West Ham away, which is obviously a vastly different prospect.
I'd argue our toughest remaining game. Sukhbir in the comments is sticking up for Spurs and says they may be higher in the table for us. What I would say to that sort of thing is, has anyone checked? Has anyone counted? Because it doesn't look right to me. You know, it doesn't look right to Spurs fans either. You know, they are the most miserable team in the country. That's not stopping anytime soon, and Liverpool are going to whack them for 43 goals next Sunday.
Spurs have good players. My fear is they sack this current incumbent bum and find some other.
They get a better bum,
bouncing bum, right?
Yeah, maybe so.
Because they've got good players, but let's not digress on Spurs. They're not.
No. That's not. No.
Forest. I'm not in the fate-tempting game at the best of times.
No.
And we on the back of our best performance in Aeons by beating Man U 7-0, we managed to go to lowly Bournemouth and get ourselves beaten. I know Bournemouth are much better than Forest, and I know we were away, but Jesus Christ.
I couldn't agree more.
That was a reversal of fortune like you wouldn't believe.
It was horrible, in fact.
Yeah, it was. It's one of the biggest body blows we've had all season. So, I'm counting no chickens. I know what I want to happen. I know what I think should happen, and let's leave it at that.
No, I think it's fair, and I think that's got to be. There's got to be humility in it all, Mike. You know, we can all laugh at Tottenham, and God knows we all will. But there's got to be humility in the from Liverpool from every minute all the way through now, and they're not in a position to be able to take anything lightly, not even for a split second. And as far as I'm concerned, I do want them to play well against Forest. I think if they do play well against Forest, they will obviously get the points. But the playing well is the key thing. I think they need to. Normally, at this stage of the season, I'd normally be saying it's just results that matter. But as you said before, it's a different season. It's a different moment. I think performances matter as well, because I think performances will breed results when they don't play quite as well. I think it's important that they show something against Forest, and if they try and they hit the straps, I think they will. But it's important they show something.
It is, and it's all about getting that buy-in and getting that collective identity again, because I don't think we can go through a period where we're just crawling over the line. I think for the players to like each other again, and for us to like them, and for the feeling around the club to be a lot more positive, there needs to be a certain level of performance. So there needs to be something, because there's so many times this season where we thought we're going to build on something. Like we beat United 7-0, then we lose next week, and there's always been like this big kind of like moment where you think, oh my gosh, it's going to happen, and then we kind of fall again. So I think for this, hopefully this is not another one of those false dawns. And I think for us to believe it's not another one of those false dawns, we need to see something tangible on the pitch after this big win. So we've had this big win against Leeds, everyone's happy. Now let's see something, let's build on this win against Leeds by beating Nottingham Forest, beating them in a convincing way. Like, I remember a win that we had earlier this season against Leicester, which is one of those where we just beaten Villa the week before or something, and then the Leicester game was midweek, I think. And I remember leaving that game when we won it, thinking that was not a good win.
I nearly
It was one of
walked
those
out.
wins.
I nearly walked out at the half an hour mark. I nearly just went, I can't watch these. This, are you
Yeah.
kidding me? I'm going to watch this. It was dreadful, Mike. It was
It
amongst the
was-
worst Liverpool performances you've ever seen.
It was a horrible win. I felt dirty after that win, actually. So I was quite like a really nice win where you're walking out, you're feeling happy, you're bouncing, you're talking about how you could win the next 7 games and go on
The
to
big
finish
7.
in top 4. The big 7. So yeah, I really want us to be in a mindset where everyone's not on the post-match pods and the post-match pint, wherever it might be, everyone's talking and feeling jovial and feeling happy again, because that's what we need. We need that feeling to come back. We need that momentum to build, and we need to go on a run and remember what it is to be Liverpool.
Give me a team prediction, Sean, because he does have the 5 games in a row quick. Now, it is the first one. He's had longer to sort of get them back fresh, and I think sometimes we think at times there's preemptive rotation, but I wonder whether or not football managers in general think, I'm not that into preemptive rotation. I'll play what I've got in front of me and then I'll work it out from there. But on paper, West Ham away, where Arsenal just drawn 2-2, is a markedly tougher game than Nottingham Forest at home. Do you think he might do a little bit of that, or do you think it might just be same again?
I think he'll probably go same again with the hope that they can get one early. I get the feeling that the problem Liverpool may have, and I hope they don't have, is that if this stays 0-0 for too long, I think this is a slightly different Forest to what we've seen in the past. I think that they're probably a bit more pragmatic to when they've had some of the drill-ins. So they're coming into it probably with a different shape and mindset, that if this is 0-0 on 30, all of a sudden half-time doesn't seem so far away. Hopefully we can get a nice early goal, and I think Forest will give up and be quite happy to shake on it. They would probably make a load of subs. They've got a massive game in midweek.
Yeah,
that's more winnable than this. So again, what they do with their lineup and subs, they'll start making changes as well. I think we could ideally get ahead and then use the 4 or 5 subs that Klopp, at least 4 subs early.
I think 4 on the hour mark feels about right to me, Sean. It feels very feasible as well.
And if you're 2-3 up, then he can do that and everyone's fresh for Wednesday then. And I don't think they plan that much further ahead, because then you take a view after Wednesday in that regard, especially this close to end of the season. So yeah, I don't think there'll be rotation on the basis of these are rubbish and I can save inverted big guns for Wednesday. I think he'll go same again. I think what you might see off the bench is, because he's had so much training time with them, and in a good way, as I've said before, Klopp is very much a manager that says, you ask me what you need to do to get in the team, I'll tell you. And ultimately, they can't deliver on that in reserve team football, because there isn't any reserve team football. So the reality is, if they train well, he has to meet them halfway, unless he's just completely binning them off in that regard. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see quirkier subs than you might have thought, partly just to keep people involved, boost morale, keep a bit of sharpness in there. You wouldn't want certain players going through the whole of this run, not getting any football and then getting itchy feet in the summer. So I think he's got to keep that in the back of his mind, that if we are winning, I want to keep that player happy, and make the changes accordingly.
There we are. Mike, do you think it'll be the same again, quick?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's no reason to rotate. We've had a long enough rest between now and between Monday and Saturday, and those lads deserve to get another go, I think.
Same again?
Yeah, I suppose so, but it's quite a tricky one, because the games really are going to come fast. I do take your point about preemptive rotation. Doesn't feel right, does it?
Saturday, Wednesday, Sunday, I think is a nice little gap.
And then Wednesday,
but
Fulham.
then it's Sunday, Wednesday. I wonder whether or not Saturday, Wednesday, Sunday, you might see not many changes, and then he might do the thing he sometimes does for a midweek game in the middle of a certain run, where all of a sudden there's 5 or 6, and you're a bit like, where's that come from? And then he thinks he'll go and fix it back from there. But you know what I mean? That's what I think we might see. Maybe one change a game for the next 3, and then maybe something that's a bit more marked.
Well, the run that starts tomorrow is 5 in 14, so that's really.
But 4 of them are at home.
Yeah. I think General Klopp is often either to throw in one like you've just said, where there's 7 changes there, but the other way he does it, especially when there's sort of this pedal to the metal, is 2 a game. Change 2 every game, but will he change 2 for this game preemptively? Is there a case for it? Probably not, but I think we then get 2 for West Ham and a different 2 for Tottenham, and so on and so on.
Okay, I think that's all very, very fair indeed. Looking forward to a Curtis Jones masterclass.
Yeah, I am.
I'm looking forward to seeing Curtis Jones play football again. I'm bang into it. I want more of it. I'd watch him if he was just knocking around on the pier head.
Just a caveat though on the Curtis situation. the interview he gave the other week, he talked about how there was this plan to manage his fitness, where they took him out of training or a game every 4 or 5 days. So it depends which part of his cycle this comes in.
That's very, very fair indeed, but it will be lovely to see Curtis Jones play football again. That
Yes.
is my main prediction, that if Curtis Jones plays football again, I will have a good time. Thank you very much indeed to Emma Leaper and to Peter Kenny-Jones. Thank you very much indeed to Rob Gutmann, to Mike Bankole and to Sean Rogers. It is a pleasure always to do Tour Live. I hope you've enjoyed it massively this week. I know I have. Got to do the business against Nottingham Forest. Nothing else will do.